Hello, everyone. Today, we'll be discussing Operation Neptune or Overlord. It was the nickname for the famous Battle of D-Day. It was an invasion between Nazi Germany, the US, Britain, Canada, but consisted of other countries, also including France, Australia, Czechoslovakia, Polish Western Forces, the Netherlands, Norway, New Zealand, Greece, South Africa, and southern Rhodesia. The battle took place in Normandy, France, along 50 miles of beaches that included Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. Omaha Beach was the worst beach to be on during that time. The invasion was planned for 2 years. I started thinking about D-Day during the Dunkirk evacuation in 1940. U.S. Captain T. Schroeder Jr. was the first American to lead his unit into the Normandy beaches. He was in the Infantry Rifle Company F, 2nd Battalion, 8th Infantry Regiment, 4th Infantry Division. Why the D-Day battle needed to happen? By 1944, the Axis army was already getting destroyed on all fronts. The Allies were dominating the seas during that time. The Allies had taken North Africa and Sicily. It started the invasion of Italy. Even though they were winning the war in 1944, they wanted all troops on the western coast because, according to them, every responsible leader and commander didn't believe in victory unless all their allies were on the western European coast. His order to undertake operations aimed at the heart of Germany and the destruction of her armed forces was a quote by, I think, one of the world leaders, the UK leader, Winston Churchill. Even though Allied forces took point, sure, but they weren't really anything big to hurt the Reich during the war. They needed a massive blow. The Red Army was destroying the Nazi army, but they were 800 miles from Berlin. So the leaders didn't care. If the Western Allies wanted to win the war as quickly as they wanted to, they needed to do something. They couldn't wait for bombings, naval blockades, or the Red Army marching to Berlin. They needed to crack Hitler's Atlantic Wall and march into Germany. What happened was, on D-Day, they landed on the beaches. The beaches were pretty much all the same, except the terrains on the beaches. They were met with MG-42 fire, artillery, and just a shred of bullets fired into their boats. The Germans used MG-34s and MG-42s, but the MG-42 was more feared because of its fire rate and effectiveness during the time. They launched the airborne troops in the Normandy, but behind the front lines. The 82nd Airborne Company and the 101st are generally considered the more famous airborne companies that landed behind the enemy front lines. They needed to block the approaches towards the beaches and capture the exits off the beaches. At 6:30 a.m. June 6, 1944, the boats landed on D-Day and they were met with heavy machine gun fire at their boats, killing them before they could even get off. Omaha was the deadliest because it was so heavily fortified that they had to run through 300 yards of open sand and climb up 100-foot cliffs to flank the German army. For the narrow ravines could be the exits and the entrances to get up, and they were all heavily defended by the German army. They also set up Belgian gates, hedgehogs, and log ramps to disable their boats, which they were designed to. And there were missed landings. Some of the boats drifted off course, leaving all units confused and mixed up. Many drowned or was mowed down by machine gun fire. Juno Beach was the second hardest to capture because of the heavy resistance from the German army. They had to fight in villages, which had heavy fortification snipers, which was a pain to deal with. The tide was rising, which shot the men and vehicles, and they had to face fire from both sides of the villages they were fighting in. St. Aubin, Sir Merritt, there in the first hour alone, they had suffered over 50% of casualties. The Gold Beach that they also fought in was the third hardest. They also had the bad weather, rain delays, which the Russians and the troops were exposed to more than they planned. So the troops were more exposed to heavy gunfire than they needed them to be, and they had fought in villages, and when they landed, along with how heavy they were open, they had to deal with artillery fire from 88 millimeter guns, which was their artillery during that time. The target was a high ground at .54, which overlooked the beaches. That beach in particular, the Gold Beach, which had .54, overlooked it. The British needed this to prevent the artillery from keep pounding the beach and stopping them from capturing it, which all of the beaches needed to be captured so they could march into France. Sword Beach was the third hardest. It was a lightly defended beach that was defended by the 716th Infantry Division, that That division defended a lot of these beaches. I think mostly all of them. These groups were the older and poorly trained troops, separated from the younger and more trained groups that they had out on the beaches, like from Omaha and Juneau. The beach was also flat and had fewer obstacles compared to Omaha and Juneau, but they had armor support from AVREs and DD tanks. It got harder because the 21st Panzer Division counterattacked them with 88 millimeters and self-propelled guns. No, the 88 millimeter self-propelled guns in the Panzer tanks, slowing down the British forces at that time. Utah Beach was the the least heaviest beach that they landed on. The Germans expected the landing to happen further north and didn't heavily fortify the beach, unlike Juneau and Omaha, which was heavily fortified. They only had light machine guns and small bunkers. Their defenses were also flooded. They intentionally did that to stop the Allied movement, but this actually helped the Allies advance along the high ground, which was easier to fight during the time because they didn't have to run through just a line of sand and killing machines, which was the machine guns they had at the time. It was a lighter resistance because obviously they didn't plan for them to go that close. The coastal defendant units were older, low quality. They were just from captured nations like Poland, France, smaller countries, which was obvious because they probably had more defensives down 50 miles, but they didn't expect them. They had an accidental advantage because many of the boats were blown off by course by the strong winds that they had. This helped them go to a heavily less defended sector that they had. They had very rapid advance compared to the other divisions on the beaches. They had the least amount of casualties, which is obvious probably. They needed a foothold, and they needed all these beaches to have a foothold to do blows to the German Reich. This push inland following the D-Day landings. The Allies were focused on making their beaches stronger so they could probably bring in more supplies, vehicles, and stuff like that. They needed to secure the cities of Sedan, a French city, and St. Lo. The Americans also needed to hold Utah and Omaha, and the British and Canadian forces, along with other countries, focused on gold, Juneau, and Sword. They needed the city of Seine, which was from June 6th. So they went into, after landing on D-Day, they went into that town or city, and they fought all the way until July 20th, but I think it was captured July 6th. I think they probably had smaller fights during that time. So they won the major battle and secured the city. They were able to advance more into France than they needed to because the Germans had France, obviously, and they desperately needed France during that time because if they needed France, they had an easy path into Germany. They after the Battle of Seine, they launched Operation Cobra. I will be focusing on that in a later video. Not maybe like tomorrow, but yeah, probably tomorrow. This was basically an offensive to break out of Normandy and rapidly crawl across France, which is from July 25th to August 1944, which was when France was captured. After Operation Cobra, the Nazis needed to race towards Paris to support the French resistance groups, which was fighting against the Nazis, trying to take back France. But obviously, that wouldn't happen if they didn't have Allied support from the bigger countries. They had another battle, the Fallacy Pocket, which was a needed battle to help cut off the German 7th Army and the 5th Panther Division from the rest of the Germans, killing 15,000 to 10,000 soldiers during that battle, which lasted from August 12th to the 21st, 1944. After this, they advanced onto France, liberated the city on the 25th of August, 1944, and this helped them go into Germany, capture Berlin, basically forcing Hitler to commit suicide. So yeah, that was it for today's video. If you liked it, please subscribe, and thank you for listening to me about talking about D-Day. Bye.